Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Tina Paul, president of the Suffolk Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And we welcome you to our financial forum this evening, Champagne Your Life. We have three fantastic, talented young ladies that will bring you information regarding real estate planning, and life insurance, something that we all need to be very knowledgeable of. So, without further ado, our second vice president, Belinda Pitts, will introduce tonight's speakers.
Greetings, and again, thank you all for joining us for Champagne Your Life. As Mrs. Paul stated, we do have three professional, educated, and experienced women here with us tonight, and they do not mind sharing their knowledge in order to inspire you on how to live your life with a peace of mind, no matter how large or small your assets are. The first attorney is Nicole Moore. She's our first part of this team. She's a graduate of George Mason University and Regent University School of Law. Attorney Moore is a former attorney for Bank of America's Private Bank and Regulatory Compliance Group. She has 7+ years of experience in wills, trusts, and estate planning. She is an attorney for the Department of Justice. The second member of the team is Mahama Gonzalez. Ms. Gonzalez is a realtor who holds a degree in finance management from Strayer University. She is experienced in military relocation as well as seller representation. She has earned the Graduate Realtor Institute designation, which means she has in-depth knowledge on the fundamentals of real estate. Ms. Gonzalez is the owner, operator of Joint Forces Property Management. And the third member of this team is Mrs. Kimberly Hitchman. Mrs. Hitchman is a graduate of Virginia State University and holds a master's degree in human resources management. She is an agent and owner of State Farm, licensed in property, casualty, life, health, and annuity series 6 and 63. Kicking off the discussion will be attorney Nikki Moore.
Good evening, and thank you very much for joining our discussion. COVID has presented us with unique opportunities because we have a unique and wonderful opportunity to do things that we don't normally see done in our community. We have Women's History Month and 3 gifted Black women. We're about to discuss an important area that unfortunately we often don't discuss: dying, and the idea about dying being a way to prepare for the lives of those that we love. How will they live after we die? Interesting enough, COVID epidemic has caused a surge in life and estate planning, life insurance policy purchases, and trust and will. But unfortunately, in our community, less than 20% of us have wills. Only 3% of us have trusts, and in between the ages of 18 to 34, only 21% of people have said they have even considered drawing up a will. Now, of the Americans who do have a will, just about 25 to 26% of them got one in the last year, and they only got one because they were worried about COVID. The majority of us, however, still do not have a will. A lot of times we look at people and we think about our future and we look at what we have, and then we look at what we don't have. That plays into the determination of whether we want to do a will or not, because we, in error, think that we don't have enough to leave. But that's not true. We are here to give you the facts and to help you plan. some of our topics. So we're going to talk about the legal terminology and the rules around inheritance. What happens when we have stuff, we want to give it away. We're going to talk about some general topics around wills and trusts. And we're going to talk about what sort of assets we can put in there. Finally, we're going to wrap up at the end of our talk and talk about advanced medical directives, living wills, healthcare proxies, and an important document that we often don't discuss, a financial power of attorney. The next slide details some basic estate planning ideals, which are exactly what is a will, what is a trust. We can have different types of trusts. Some are revocable, meaning that you can put something in the box, you can put something in the trust, and that you can take it out. And some are irrevocable. It means that you put an asset in a trust and you're unable to take it back out. A lot of times you see people put in bonds and actual certificates of deposit. The next slide is planning and contemplation of death. As I said at the beginning, it's the idea of what will the people that we love and care about do after we're gone? When we think about that, most of us have our largest asset, the place that we live, our home. Who is going to get that? If you don't have a spouse, the consideration is how do you want to devise it? How do you want to ensure that the people that you love get that particular piece of property? And then the question is, how do you want them to get it? Do you want to make sure that they have it outright, meaning that they have full rights and that they can then sell it? Or do you want them to have what we call a life estate, meaning that they have the right to live there during their life, and then afterwards, something else happens to it? You also, when we consider a will, which is what we all know, it begins with those words that are sort of trite, but it's the words that are legal words and they work. I, Nicole Moore, being of sound mind and body, because those are the magic words, meaning that you are fully mentally cognizant, you're ready, you're prepared, you know what you're doing, and no one should be able to question it. I'm of full mental capability and I'm giving away this, this, and this. If you have people that you worry about, if you have a special needs child or someone that you love that you want to take care of may have dementia or early onset Alzheimer's, you have to also consider who do you want to be responsible for administering your estates. The next slide should be about what property does your will cover. And on one side, we have what we call probate property. And it is the sort of things like your home. If you want to not add an individual and you want to wait until you're going to give it away, that goes into the box, the probate box, to be administered after your death. Or we have what we call non-probate property, which you'll have an in-depth discussion with Kimberly Hitchman, State Farm. And non-probate property is what we consider life insurance, joint property, our retirement benefits, what property that we do put in those trusts, and what we call payable on death accounts. So the next slide should be a picture of what is probate property. It's the stuff. Thank you. I just got a note. I appreciate you. Let's see. Okay, sorry about that. A little bit of issue over here because I can't see the presentation. However, I have it on good authority that y'all can. So we should be on the slide that is next, Nicole, probate property. And we're going to talk for a moment with Kim, and we're going to talk about first the stuff that you can put in a will, which are your cash and your bank account, your house, your cars, your jewelry. You can give it to whomever you want by way of will. That is distinct and different from what we call non-probate property, which is given in consideration of other things. And now we have Kim Hitchman.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm Kimberly Hitchman. Glad to be here today to give you this valuable information. As Nikki was sharing with you with wills, she shared with you a lot of things that can be included in wills. The one thing I need to share with you as far as life insurance and wills. Life insurance, you have the opportunity to name your beneficiary. Well, in a will, you may elect to say, I would like to leave some life insurance, the life insurance policy that I have with A or B company to John Doe. Well, and your beneficiary is Jane Doe. The life insurance company will automatically pay the beneficiary that's on the life insurance policy. This is one instance where what's in your will does not dictate how the beneficiary proceeds, the life insurance proceeds are paid out. So keep that in mind when please look at your policy and talk with your agent, which we will get into in just a few moments. I'm going to turn it back over to Nicole.
Thank you. So here are a couple of facts. If you die without a will, the will means that you make the decision, but if you die without a will, the state essentially writes one for you through what we call the intestacy laws. For example, let's talk about New York and New Jersey. Any assets that you own would be passed to your surviving spouse and then your children. But let's talk about in Texas, for example. Your state would then put all of your property into their, what they call intestacy probate process. And then your property is equally divided amongst your relatives. Now, that may not be what you want. However, it happens often. As I said at the beginning, less than 25 or so % of us actually have wills. There are many famous people who left a great deal of money. They had no will. Prince, Howard Hughes, we can go on and on. But why did they not? Well, a lot of times we don't contemplate the end of our lives or what's going to happen afterwards. We don't want to talk about death. We don't want to talk about mortality. Or you have the issue of you want to give something to someone and something to someone else, and you're scared about telling the person, hey, I'm giving you my newest car. And the other person says, well, I'm the one who really needs a car. When we have that sort of lack of decision-making, we leave a mess for the people that we love. Fact number 2, you're never too young to have a will. We all want to think we want to live a very, very long time, but if you don't leave a will, you're leaving it to your grief-stricken family to figure out what you may have wanted or figure out what's best for everyone. And look, if you're gone, nobody can fuss at you about who left what to who. And fact number 3, the reality is that a lot of times in our communities, we just tell someone, you know, when grandma passed away, she wanted you to have the china or her wedding ring. Now grandma gone and everybody wants the wedding ring because that thing's good luck. They were married for 50 years. So, the next slide, please. The reality is that we have to plan. So I talked a little bit about what happens. So where we live, we have an order of priority, and first is your spouse, then it's your other descendants, or your children, your grandchildren, it is your siblings, your other relatives. And it's a wonderful sort of tree, and that it starts with your spouse. And if you don't have a spouse, it goes to your children. If it doesn't have if you don't have children, then it goes back up to your parents, and then to your parents' children, and out and so forth. We have what we call that last bullet point, laughing heirs. You see it a lot of times in families that disconnect, families that fall out. Someone passes away and it's the great aunt that so-and-so never knew. And just to know, everyone, in each state, you can go to the website, you can go to Google, put in your state, and you can look up and see if someone has left something for you. If the state has something that you may have money for you, may have property for you. At the end of the presentation, I'll add the link for Virginia and DC to the Delta Sigma Theta Suffolk Alumni Chapters site so that you can all get that. Next slide, please. We talked a little bit about this, but what happens when you die intestate and the state figures it out? The reality is that if you're driving around with your spouse and you're both in a car accident, in the event that you have children from a previous relationship and they have children from a previous relationship, your property may or may not go to your children. If you're both in an accident and you both have previous injuries, let's say the wife dies first. Under the law, all of her property goes to her husband, and then he dies second. All of his property then goes to his children, meaning that any children of the wife, that they don't get anything, because that's what we call about who really survives you. Family wipeout rules. We talked a little bit about that, where the entire family is gone, and then you have to go through grandparents and great grandparents to find an heir. Next slide. So what your will cannot do. If you bought some certificates of deposit or bonds, and I have my name up there first, and then I have Kim's name up there second, I can't then say on my will that I want that particular piece of property to go to my spouse or my partner or my children, because that is non-probate property that has already been decisioned and it's out of my hands. And that's the same thing with, she said, life insurance, account titles, deeds. It is important to fill out those forms and do so regularly, because as your life changes, you may decide to change who will benefit. Next slide. And now we're taking a pause for questions.
There aren't any questions at this time, Attorney Moore.
Okay. Thank you, Soror Pitts. Next slide, please, Nicole. All right. Now I'm introducing my partner in crime, my cousin, and Soror, Kimberly Hitchman. Please come.
Hi, family. Back again. I have a short video that I would like for you to view. It's a powerful video. So if we could play the video, please.
I love my two boys. They're my whole world. They're everything to me. But being a single parent at my age was never a thought of mine. My wife, Katie, she was the nicest person anyone could ever meet. We started our life together. We got married. When we started our family, Katie wanted life insurance, but being young and healthy, I didn't think we needed it. It's a good thing Katie got her way on that. Shortly after our second son was born, Katie contracted Ewing sarcoma cancer. No matter what, we were positive, you're gonna make it. A year and a half after our second son was born, cancer took her life.
Katie was adamant about getting life insurance for her family. Some people think that because they're young and healthy, that they don't need life insurance, but they do. Now, Stephen can raise his sons without having to worry about money.
Although nothing can bring Katie back, the life insurance has afforded us to be able to keep the life that we had before she passed.
Powerful video. Powerful video. I experienced that a lot. I actually know the agent who handled that situation. That could be you or someone else or someone that you know. Let me ask you, and I want you to seriously think about this. Proper insurance. Do you have proper insurance in place? As in the video, it was unexpected. This can happen to any of us. We don't think, sometimes like he was saying that he was young, then the best time to get insurance is when you're young. It's not as expensive at that time. Are you prepared? Death, long-term care. Sometimes we also forget that illness may cause us that we cannot work. Have we prepared for that? That's disability insurance. So we'll get into a little bit of that as well. You just need to understand that these risks are real and that we need to take that seriously and be prepared for that, okay? Next slide, please. Why don't we have what we need? Oh, I'll take care of it tomorrow. Oh, I'm not gonna die today. Those are some of the things I'm sure you've heard. I've heard with people I've known, and I know you, that family that you've heard within your own families. So failure to plan. When something happens, that's when everyone then wants to talk about it. Then let's skip a little bit ahead with life insurance and COVID. COVID has changed a lot of things. Life insurance is one of them. How are we handling that now in the industry right now? What's happening is you can still get approved for life insurance, but the underwriting, now understand underwriting guidelines can change from time to time at any point. But with COVID, you have to have a negative test for at least 30 days and 30 days symptom free, and all underwriting rules would apply. So you can still obtain life insurance, but you have to go through a more rigorous underwriting to ensure that we're willing to take the risk. So I ask you, no one expected this pandemic, but again, we failed to plan. It's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to die. Well, guess what? We're all going to die one day. Ask yourself, do you really want to leave your family struggling with life insurance? And I have seen people prepared, and I've seen people not prepared. And I can tell you, it's a much better, of course, you're going to miss that family member, but it's a much better situation when you're prepared for life insurance when your loved one dies unexpectedly. So stop procrastinating, family. Take care of that. Look at that. Because that's basically the main reason we say, I'm going to get to it later, procrastination. Also, many people just do not know what to do, who to talk to. how to do it. We're here. Next slide, please. Again, just added life insurance during the time of a pandemic. I can tell you that during this time, there was a surge in an increase in people asking, Kim, I need to talk to you about life insurance. Pandemic caused people to think about that because we all may have lost a loved one, or a loved one became ill with COVID, maybe a friend, family member, schoolmate. We didn't expect it. So now when this happened, people are asking about it now. It's on they don't want to procrastinate anymore. They're asking the questions. Let's, again, stop procrastinating and let's plan. Let's take care of this now. Next slide, please. Who's your agent? There are questions I encourage you to ask your agent. Understand, if you don't have an agent, you can always call me, Kimberly Hitchman. I'll be more than happy to assist you with this. How stable is the insurer? How much insurance do you need? I get this question a lot. Kim, what should I get? What's best for me? What are the benefits? What are exclusions? Can I convert this policy? When you're talking with an agent or your agent, and I encourage you to do this if you don't have life insurance, or if you do have life insurance, to speak with your current agent, or again, I'm always available. Ask that agent these questions. What do you have if you do have it? If you don't have it, how do I get it? And help me understand. Next slide, please. What are the benefits of life insurance? There's term and whole life, or term and permanent protection. Term is generally a 10, 20, 30-year term, meaning that it ends. Permanent insurance goes for the rest of your life. The main difference between term and whole life insurance and permanent life insurance is permanent life insurance builds cash value. Some say, oh, some people prefer term, some prefer whole life, some prefer a blend. It's not about me, it's about you. I would have a conversation, or whoever your agent is in whatever company, you need to talk with them. They need to ask you questions to find out what your plan is. What do you want for your family? I always encourage people to at least have enough to take care of those final expenses. Because, and you may ask me, Kim, why do you do that? Because I've seen families grieve and not able to grieve because they have no life insurance, and they're concerned, how are they going to pay for their loved ones' final expenses. So I encourage you, pick one, but have that conversation. Term insurance, whole life. Those are the two. Term, whole life. Whole life is part of permanent protection. But again, your agent can get into more detail with that. But you need to understand the basics of it. Understand, someone asked me as well recently, Kim, what if I'm sick and I need to use my life insurance? Well, permanent insurance builds cash value you can borrow against your policy, okay? Now understand, if your doctor has said that you have a year left to live, you actually can borrow 65% of your policy to take care of any expenses during that time. So your family wouldn't have a burden taking care of any expenses that you may need while you're here. So there are benefits that are part of the policies that people aren't aware of. Again, it goes back to having the conversation. We will educate you. We will explain it to you. We will have the conversations with you to help you understand. We will answer your questions. What you need to do is stop procrastinating and get some life insurance. It's a serious, I've seen it too much. And I've seen people have a lot of life insurance, and I've seen people have not a lot, but can take care of final expenses. But I've also seen people who have nothing. And I've cried with too many people in that situation. So as an insurance agent, I have to make sure that I'm talking with you and talking with your loved ones and encouraging you to get some life insurance. Next slide, please. Again, this is term and whole life. Term is 10, 20 year. What you need to understand about term insurance, it ends though. It ends. If you have a 20-year term, after the end of that 20 years, the policy is gone. You had the coverage. Someone says, oh, well, that means I don't get any of my money back. I just gave my money away. No, you did not. You had coverage, because if something had happened to you, if you had passed untimely during that 20 years, that policy's face value will be paid out. So nothing's lost because you had the coverage. And I talk about this, about procrastinating. I need to add with this. I know we're talking about life insurance, but it also ties into liability insurance, because that's what insurance is, protecting your assets. I also encourage you, your auto insurance, check your limits. In the state of Virginia, you're required to have 25, 50, 25 limits, okay? Also on your policy, you can get an additional life insurance on your policy, because guess what? People die in car accidents. I'm sure you've heard that. And when that happens, there's an endorsement on your auto policy, if you choose that, in the event of an accident, that can be paid out. So there are times people I have seen situations where people did not have any life insurance, but they had an endorsement on their policy, auto policy, and they were killed in that car accident, and those proceeds paid out, and that helped that family take care of their loved ones, their final expenses. So keep that in mind as well. So your liability on your auto is very important, because guess what? If you're in an accident and you cause someone's death, it's an accident, that's what happens. Guess what? You need to make sure your liability limits are in place, because if you do not have the liability limits that you're comfortable with, you have assets that may be taken away from you, again, because of not prepared. That's what insurance is. You need to plan for all your insurances, for your life insurance, your auto insurance, home, and disability. It all works in together. And in a few moments, Muhammad's going to come in and discuss with you how the real estate, because all of this, wills, everything that we do, tie in together. Next slide, please. Questions at this time?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay. And hey, let me also add, there may not be any questions right now, but we're always available after today. So we will be looking at the feed. If you need to reach out to us at the end, there will be contact information, because we're very serious about this, and we want you to have the information to arm yourself to make sure you're making the best decisions for you and your family in reference to wills, life insurance, and real estate, and how it all ties together. Thanks for your time. We'll be back. I'll be back. I'm going to turn it over back to Nikki.
All right. Hello, family, friends, and watchers. All right. This is going to be really short. We've talked about our will. We've talked about some insurance. And now we're going to talk about something that you can put your insurance to, a trust fund. Trust funds are an interesting sort of legal fiction, next slide, in that it creates a gift for the future. And in that future, you can choose how it is spent, how it is managed, and how it is given out. Now, for some of the control freaks out there, you're going to be gone to glory, but guess what? They still have to do what you tell them to do. Winning. Next slide, please. So there are a couple of different types of trust I mentioned before. One is revocable, one is irrevocable. You can put your life insurance policy in a trust. If you have minor children, a lot of times this is a way to ensure that your children are paid out at 18 or 21 or 25 or 30, or it can be invaded for certain events. If, for example, your child doesn't want to go to college and they want to go to trade school, or your child wants to get married, or they want to buy a house. When you put, let's say, your $500,000 life insurance policy in a trust, you can determine who you want to manage it. In the same way that you identify who you want to manage your assets and give them away, your trustee and your will, you can also identify the same for a trust. Next slide, please. So, couple of things. A trust, like I said at the beginning, is sort of, imagine a gift box, and you can put certain things in it and certain things that you can take out. If you have an insurance policy, as Kim referred to, I think called it not whole, it's not called whole life any longer.
It's whole.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's still permanent insurance or universal life permanent insurance. You can put that in a trust. But as she said, you can also borrow against it, even if you've put it in the trust. CDs, bonds, all of that. When you have a revocable trust, you can put assets in and take them out until, well, the end. Next slide, please. As I said, during your entire life, you get to decide how, when, who. You can identify your best friend, y'all fall out, you take them off. You identify your child, y'all have that Kirk Franklin, Carrie Ann Franklin sort of situation, take them off too. All things are changeable. And the great thing about trusts is that the assets that you have in trust are not subject to certain taxes. And even if you don't identify the successor, you avoid probate. You avoid those issues. Now, there's always a question of what happens if you put an asset in. Let's say you put stocks in and those stocks don't grow to what you had hoped. That doesn't matter. That still doesn't destroy your trust. Next slide, please. Now, the greatest asset, as I said, many of us have, are our homes. That can go into trust. And you get to determine how, when, who. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mahama, and she is going to discuss real estate and some of the implications in COVID and some other wonderful things about your great asset. Hold on.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Nikki stated, my name is Mahama Gonzalez, and we're going to talk about how having a will or not having a will is relative to being a homeowner. Excuse me. Let me just say that right now in the market of real estate, it's a market that we haven't seen in a very, very long time. Interest rates are very, very low. Sellers are making a lot of money selling their homes, a lot of money selling their homes. That being said, COVID, however, has had a huge impact in our community. I have come across a number of homeowners who are looking to sell their homes, but they don't have a will. Or what happens when you have a will or do not have a will and you're a homeowner. So let me just touch on that a little bit. If you do not have a will and the homeowner should decease, pass away, then that property or that estate automatically has to go to probate. So what does that mean for the family members? That means that a judge or the court appoints someone to go ahead and handle the estate of that, to handle the estate, which includes the real estate itself. So that judge is going to go ahead and appoint an executor or an executress, and then they're just going to handle all the affairs. So you basically do not have any control because the court of law is taking care of that for you. However, if you have a will and that well has real estate attached to it, that well needs to be recorded with the county, or excuse me, the city of where that property is located at. In that will, there should also be an executor or an executress. There should also, if there's heirs, then those heirs are going to also be on that will as well. When it comes time to selling that property, a lot of folks don't know that a title search is done on the heirs as well. I have recently come across several properties that I have been asked to sell when we have the homeowners have lost, when the homeowners have become deceased, and the heirs have to have it if there's any credit issues, or if there's any tax liens, or if they own any creditors by way of their credit reports, those creditors would have to be paid back before those creditors would have to be paid in order to close that transaction. I just recently had this happen here where we had a transaction. There was 9 heirs. And when we were speaking to one another, myself and the 9 heirs, I made it very clear to them that if you owe any creditors in the title search, it will be found out. This particular transaction should have closed in 10 days because it was a cash purchase. And everyone, all 9 of the heirs, stated that they did not owe anyone. And as it turned out, they did. So that particular transaction that should have closed in 10 days ended up closing in about 90 days. So it does affect the sale of the property. And I'm just finding that a lot of folks in our community do not have wills. Wills are very, very important if you have real estate. It doesn't take a whole lot. You just have to get it together and put one together and go ahead and have it recorded. At this time, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Nikki.
All right. One more time. Hey, y'all. Next slide, please. Now that we've talked about sort of the stuff that we can leave behind, I'm going to talk about some important documents that tie into our will. And they are the living will, a healthcare power of attorney. That's a document, what happens if you can't make your decisions, and a financial power of attorney. Next slide. Every time you have a major life event, you get a new job, you get a new spouse, you really have to think about what those contracts you signed, being your life insurance beneficiary form, your form that you did when you went to work, where does your last paycheck go? Every time you have a major life change, you have to look at those forms, whether it's child, marriage, adoption, look at them, update them. The rule of thumb is every 3 to 5 years. And we do have one more important point to make about life insurance, and I'm going to toss it over to Kimberly.
I'm back. I need to share this with you all. Review your beneficiaries, review your policies with your agent regularly. Nikki is correct. This is thing when you have a life-changing event, such as a marriage, having a child, you definitely need to review those things. But not only that, you need to review it regularly. I would suggest 1 to 2 years, or when things change, because you don't want to be in a situation where you intended to change your beneficiary. You did not. It could be in the situation where it was an ex-spouse. You didn't change that beneficiary. Now that person is deceased, and the person who you're thinking you want those monies to go, the proceeds to go to, because you did not update your beneficiary, we're going to give the proceeds will be paid out to that person. That's real talk. That happens. So in order to make sure that your policy is how you want it to be, who your beneficiaries are, you need to talk with your agent on a regular basis. Give us a call. We don't know if something has changed unless you share that with us. Cannot stress that enough. Review your policy, but if you don't have a policy, family, I encourage you, you need to speak to an agent immediately and take care of that. As Nikki had mentioned earlier, you're never too young to do that. As Muhammad was talking about how all of this impacts real estate. You may be purchasing a house. You may have one policy, but now you've purchased a house. You need to talk with your agent and review that, because now you may need to increase that. Now you add a child into the mix. You need to increase that, because what if something happens to you? You want to make sure you leave that, your family, your loved ones, your spouse who's left with that child, taken care of. I've seen both cases where spouse died, no funds. I've also seen it where spouse dies, they took care, they didn't procrastinate, they planned. Do that. That happens. And a child, I've had people say, Kim, I'm not getting it on a child because that's just morbid. Well, guess what? They're healthy. You're preparing them for the future. I tell my policyholders, if your child never gets another policy, you have ensured, you've set the foundation that they have something to carry with them. Hopefully, though, what I found, those families who do life insurance, as their children get older, they come back, they do that too. So we need to do that, family. That's leaving a legacy for your family. Don't leave debt, don't leave a burden to them. Leave them where they can take care of your final expenses, and where, guess what? They'll be okay. And they'll say, my family cared about me. And that's what it's all about. We have to take care of each other, and family, we have to take care of each other better in all of our communities. So I ask you, and I have a book. You definitely want to get a will, but also sometimes what I found that people don't know where people want to get buried, where people want their funeral home to be, where they don't know where the jury is. They don't even know where the life insurance policies are. So I have a book that you can outline that, because so many times people say, oh, they don't want to know my business. Guess what? When you die, we're in your business. So you need to tell them up front so your business can be taken care of, and you can pass knowing that, hey, I took care of my family. So we need to stop it. If I sound like I'm fussing at you a little bit, and I am, but I just want us to get it together. It's all with love, and take care of our family. So please do that. It's okay. When a child, I have family members, when they have a child, they automatically get, policyholders, when they have a child, they automatically get a policy on that child. It's not, they don't plan for their child to pass away. They're preparing for their future. They didn't fail to plan. They planned. They didn't procrastinate. What are you going to do? Do you know where your parents or your sister or your loved one's husband, wife, do you know where their policy is? Ask them. We need to have these conversations. If I could tell you the many times people have called me to find out, hey, do they have did my loved one have a policy? And I have to, confidentiality. I always tell them, if there's a policy, we will contact. Sometimes we don't know until someone has called us. And when someone calls you to tell you that their loved one has passed and to remove them from their auto or home policy, and I know, and I'm looking, and I know they had a life insurance policy, and I'm able to tell that person, well, and I knowing that they're the beneficiary, well, your family member had prepared. They wanted to make sure, I know you're going to miss them, but guess what? They have a policy here in the event of their death, and you are the beneficiary. That's when you know what you do matters. I have seen people cry when I've had of course, we're missing that person, but when they know that their loved ones took the time to make sure they were okay, if they were no longer here, the impact as an agent that have on you is priceless. So, because understand we're all going to die. Let's take care of ourselves, take care of our families, loved ones. I can go on and on about this today, but I know for time we can't. But I'm always available. Either you talk with me or you talk with someone, not yesterday, but today. Okay, let's take care of that family and they can handle your disability insurance. It's all about knowledge. But if you do need the book that I was telling you about, explaining where you can explain what you want versus you may want to go to A funeral home, but your loved ones put you in B funeral home because they didn't know. Well, in this book, you can outline that and you say, hey, if something happens to me, this book is there. They can pull it out and now they're doing what your wishes are. They're doing what you want because you told them. If you want that book, put it in the comment section. Within a week, I will follow up with you and make sure I get one of those booklets to you. It's valuable. Doesn't replace a will. Nikki, that is important. And your house, all your assets, your real estate, which Muhammad talked about. But this, you will be able to outline all of that in this book as well. It's just a guideline for us to know what you want and for your family members to do to make sure they're honoring your wishes. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Nikki. Do we have any questions so far?
Yes, we do have a few questions.
Okay.
Sora Whitley.
Yes. So the first question is, how do you protect your children when you're a single parent and you don't want the other parent to have any say over assets of the kids or custody?
This is a Nikki question. I can, as far as the insurance piece, I can answer that, but as far as insurance piece.
Okay, so if a couple is married and the property is only in the name of the spouse who dies and there is no will, what happens to the property? And then we just have 3 questions.
Okay.
And then the next question is, could we have beneficiaries for accounts and policies, then have a will to explain how to use the money from the policies and the accounts?
Okay. Nikki's going to answer first.
All right. So make sure I understood. The first question is, you have a spouse and you have a child, or are these individuals who are co-parenting, they're not married, and they have a child?
So I guess
different.
Possibly you're a single parent and there's not, the other parent is possibly not in the picture or hasn't been in the picture. And
I understand.
Right.
Okay. Got it. So there are a couple of things here. First, let me just say that preparing for death is actually a setup for preparing for life. So you have a child, you want to make sure your child is taken care of. If you die while your child is a minor, you can make plans for who will have custody of your child in your event of your death. You will talk to an attorney licensed in the jurisdiction where you live, and you can be assured that your wishes will be done after you are gone. As far as your assets, that goes back to what we talked about of trust, where you can direct a person on how your assets will be given and administered for the benefit of your child. Before things were a lot formalized, a lot of us have godparents. Well, that was the nature of a godparent. If you and your husband or wife died, that person, that couple would step in and they would guarantee that they will help raise your child to adulthood. As far as your assets, trusts, an estate planning attorney will do the very best job. They can put your house in a trust. They can put your vehicle in your trust. They can put your insurance policy in a trust. If you have cash, that will go in a trust. And then they can use that money and administer it to the custodian of your child. That custodial arrangement goes to the JDR court of your jurisdiction. I think that should sort of cover it. And and just one important note is that even if you, let's say in this scenario, you and your partner, the child's other parent aren't together, and you do believe that this person will care for your child, you still don't have to give your assets to that person's control. You can leave it in trust until your child reaches maturity. And what's the second question, please, for?
If a couple is married and the property is only in the name of the spouse who dies and there's no will, what happens to the property?
It goes to here, Mahama, we have our real estate guru. Here we go.
Hey there. So typically what will happen is that it'll go to the surviving spouse. Just recently, I came across a couple or some adult children who father had remarried after their mother had passed away. He did not have a will, and the surviving spouse got everything, including the house, many houses. So yes, the surviving spouse will be the one to retain that property. Okay.
Thank you, Mahama. That's what we used to call those estates called white acre. And whoever the last person standing, they get it all, even if that wasn't your intent. You have someone else on grandma's land, she's turning over. What's the third question, please?
The third and last question so far is, could we have beneficiaries for accounts and policies, then have a will to explain how to use the money from the policies and accounts?
So I'm going to answer part of the question, and then I'm going to have Kimberly answer the other part of that question. A life insurance policy is a contract. It is a contract. It is a contract. A will can also be a contract. But what we're talking about is a mixture of contract and our wishes. And that is why we choose executors and executrix who will have our best interest in heart. The person that we leave behind to tell our story is the person who ensures what happens to that property when it is not covered by a contract. If you have a beneficiary, the beneficiary can take anything, and that's what we talked about earlier, non-probate versus probate property. Non-probate property is insurance because it is a contract, and you have a form that you fill out where you identify the beneficiary. And when you wish to change that beneficiary, you may not do so through your will. You must fill out the form. Kim?
And one final one, I'm sorry. Could you also speak to the need of having beneficiaries on bank accounts and why you should do that?
Well, no, Kim, you can finish answering the last question.
Okay.
And then
Let me finish, answer the second part to the previous question, and then we'll answer that one.
Sure, my apologies.
Freeze. When you elect that beneficiary for a child, your child is the beneficiary or whoever you elect that beneficiary, we're going to pay that proceeds out to that person. We will not tell them how to use that. Now, there are people who they want to put their children as beneficiaries. If they're under 18, I encourage putting that into definitely a trust. So you can make sure that child uses that money, or whoever is left behind with them that money, you've made the decision for that child to use that money in a certain manner, or not to have access to that money until a certain age. That's when you will put that beneficiary in a trust, if you're choosing the child as a beneficiary. Because if that person passes and you put that child as a beneficiary, whoever has access to that child, the beneficiary is still going to be paid out to them, but you have to go to courts to get access to that. It's a little more detailed. So I always encourage people to talk with them. I don't tell people what to do, but I guess definitely give them some guidance. They need to make sure whoever they decide as their beneficiary is the person they want they are comfortable and are confident that they will use the funds in the manner that they would choose. But we can't dictate how that beneficiary use their money. Now we give them options on, maybe you can keep the money here. We may encourage them to maybe they might want to invest in another life insurance policy for themselves, keep that money there. So there are other options we can do versus, or we can pay it all out at one time. The person has that option. So I think that answered that question. And the last question again was what?
About banking.
Okay.
About banking.
Well, Nikki's gonna answer that one.
All right, and the fourth question. We have there are different types of bank accounts, as we all know. Most of us are familiar with checking, savings. We may have mutual fund accounts. Some of us have accounts that are tied to the equity in our homes, HELOC accounts. However, payable on death accounts are and let me take a step back. Any account that you have assets in, or that you may owe money on for that part, because that happens in cases of HELOCs, and that with the fluctuation of the value of your home, even though you're not supposed to be over leveraged, it can happen. And then all of a sudden you die and the bank takes your house. But that aside, it is very important to either, one, have a second name on your account. That is the most expedient way to ensure that a particular person has access to those funds. A lot of times when our parents get older, they'll put our name on their account. That passes outside of probate. And that means that the person on the account, how you identify them, if it is a joint account, meaning that when you die, it goes automatically to them, or if they are a person who only is authorized to use the account, which is different than a joint account holder, that fund, when it is only a person who is authorized to use it on your behalf, goes into your probate. It is very important that you make a determination with your banking official how you want your accounts handled. And that goes to another point that we're talking about. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, next slide. We have really been on it. Here we go, beneficiaries. And it is the idea of you have to provide them with the name and address. Bank forms require a social security number in the event that the person you identify has some outstanding debts, and that is offset. If you want to avoid the issues around probate, then you have joint accounts, and it automatically goes to that one person. Now, this is an area that we have to talk about, trusting the people that we have given access to our money, our homes, our accounts. If you have more than, let's say you have a situation where you have 2 children or 3 children, and you have one child who you rely upon, or one child who's simply closer in area to you, a lot of times that will be the person that you may wish to have as a second name on your account. However, in your will and with the bank, you specify that those funds are not considered part of a joint, they're not a joint account. They are yours and yours alone, so that you may fill out the beneficiary form, and that person or persons who you have elected will get those funds. So now, are there any other questions? And then we'll get back to the presentation and start wrapping up.
There are no questions at this time.
Okay. Next slide, please. So fiduciary, we talked about that a little bit. It's the person that you trust. And it's the person that you put it in their hand and you trust them at any point to give it back. Now, it sounds a little weird, but when you have someone who is a fiduciary, it is the person that not only you trust, it's the person that you believe will do just what you ask. And they will treat your property, they will treat your assets just as they were their own. So it's, as we talked about it, when we talked about a trustee, an executrix, an executor, a beneficiary, a fiduciary, these are all positions of trust. And we each have to make a decision about who these people are. A lot of times over the course of our life, they change. And this goes back to what we said, every couple of years, review how you want your assets to be held and shared. Next slide, please. I'm going to segue a little bit into something we glossed over. And this is going to be a short moment that we can talk about advanced medical directives, health proxies. Especially, this is something we really want to talk about because of the great number of people who are being hospitalized. And advanced medical directive is very clear about what you wish the person you trust, the person in the position of trust, what they will do and decide for you. That healthcare proxy, advanced medical directive, when you have a will prepared, all three of those documents are part of that. And for your advanced medical directive, it talks about things like, do you want, in the event of your death, do you want to make a donative transfer of certain organs? Or do you want them to resuscitate you? Do you want to receive blood transfusions? Do you want what you want? Do you want them to take extraordinary measures to save your life? That is an important document, and the person that you assign that to should be a person in a position of trust. There's also a financial power of attorney, which a lot of people put all in a single document. That is in the event you are unable to make your own decisions. You have identified a person who will act as you. You have given them the trust. You have made them your fiduciary. They are acting as you would. And that person will pay your bills. That person will administer your accounts. That person will change your life insurance policies. That person can sell your property. Those forms are important because you want your family to know what to do about just your body as a advanced medical directive and your property as a financial power of attorney and who you identify in those positions of trust. Next slide. So now we are getting towards the end, and there are some important details that we talked about. I was numbering some things earlier, and I know I got through 1, 2, 3. 4 was update, update, update. Make sure that the person that you want is on the form. The person that you want is in the will. The person that you trust and love has a plan for after you're gone. Item number 5, and this is going to sound sort of controversial coming from an attorney. However, you don't need an attorney to do this. You don't. I have a whole bunch of wonderful friends that are in the legal community, and those of us who love the law, who are prepared, we have the spirit of a banker upon us. We were contemplating these things. I know I've had a will since I was like 16 because I had stuff. And it wasn't just my teddy bear, but it was the pearl necklace my mom gave me. I wanted to make sure that my cousin Sydney had it. And then now I have a lot more jewelry. And then I need Logan to have it. And I want this person to have it. And You don't need someone like me to tell your loved ones how you want them to proceed ahead in life when you're gone. You write it down, you record it. There are wonderful websites, but the caveat is this: you cannot become complicated. You cannot, through a website, say, I want this person to have it and have a life estate. And then if they die, I want this other person to have it for a term of 10 years until they can get on their feet. No, you need an estate planning attorney for that, because that ensures that there is someone who is hearing you and is able to communicate that and get that in the exact language required by your state. Next slide, please. And this is important to note. When you are describing the property, you must be accurate, please. It's nothing worse than saying, I give my favorite ring, or I give my wedding ring to so-and-so, knowing that you don't have 3 husbands, you've been engaged 4 times, and your last name is Lopez. But you have to be clear, describe the property so that they know, and you have ease of mind knowing that at least you told them what you wanted them to know. Your will, your advanced medical directive, your plans for real estate, your plans for your life insurance. Being prepared for death is actually preparing for life. You want to create a legacy. You want to take care of your family. You want to take care of your loved ones. You don't want them to be in a situation where all of the assets that you worked a lifetime to acquire are then taken in taxes. We avoid that by planning. And again, there are estate planning attorneys who will help you through this. A lot of them will give a 1-hour consultation for free. If you're looking for someone, like I said, that's the benefit of going to law school. All of a sudden, half of my friends are lawyers. I work with a whole bunch of lawyers and I know a whole bunch more. And I see my cousin out of the corner of my eye and I know she wants to say something. It's killing her. Please, Kim.
Back again, Nikki reminded me of something. Life insurance, again, we cannot stress enough to review. As Nikki was discussing, you want to have a person of trust. If you have not updated your beneficiary, or you have updated the beneficiary, and let's say you changed it to the girlfriend, but the wife has paid the bill, and you pass on. And when the person comes to talk with us about the life insurance proceeds, recognize, is there a name change? If the reply is no, we can't talk to that wife. We have to contact the person that's the beneficiary. It happens. So again, you must do that. Must update your beneficiary and make sure the owner of the policy hasn't changed. Again, it goes back to communication. And again, as Nikki was saying, it all ties in together. I mentioned earlier that there's also an endorsement you can put on your auto policy, and that the state requires that you have 25, 50, 25. I have to give this information. I know we're focusing on life insurance, but again, people do not realize it's still auto, home, all of that still ties together because it's your assets. The car, you may be leaving that car to someone. You may be leaving that house to someone. Well, what happens, you might want to talk to if I ask you this question right now, what are your liability limits? Do you know the answer? Some people say, oh, 500. Like, no, that's your deductible for collision and other than collision. And every day you may say comp and collision. In insurance, we say collision other than collision, meaning how it will be paid out. Those are your deductibles. Your liability limits are either 25, 50, 25, which represents 25,000 per person, 50,000 per incident, or 25,000 property damage. Those numbers can change. I recommend personally, this is 100, 300, 100 is a safe. Now, if you have assets, you may want to consider increasing that to 50, 500, 100, and adding an umbrella policy with that, because umbrella protect your assets as well. That auto you have, that home you have, then guess what? Something happens, you want to keep those assets that you want to transfer to your loved ones. So you need to protect that. In the case of an accident, that umbrella policy will protect that. Again, whoever your agent is, you need to talk with them, make sure your auto insurance is where you want it to be, tie it in with your life insurance, and possibly an umbrella policy. So I'm asking you, do you know what your automobile insurance, what your liability limits are? If you don't, I encourage you to immediately look at that, review that, to ensure you know, because you want, in the event of an accident, hopefully that you won't have an accident, but that's why it's called an accident. If you do, you will automatically know, okay, I have, because if there's an accident with 3 or 4 cars and you cause that, you may not have enough in your policy, because understand the insurance company liability is what your agreement is. If your agreement is the state minimums 25, 50, 25, because that's every state is different, but that's Virginia's minimum liability limits, then that's the insurance company's agreement. They're going to pay that out. If it exceeds that, then you're responsible for the additional. Any questions?
Sorry, Hitchman, I have one question.
Yes.
You touched a little bit about a deceased and then the wife coming to talk about the insurance policy, however, someone else is listed as the beneficiary. Suppose the deceased is still married and the insurance is listed as the girlfriend as the beneficiary. Who's responsible for planning the funeral? Will it still be the spouse, or would it be the person who is the beneficiary of the insurance policy?
Again, we can't tell the beneficiary how to pay the proceeds. For instance, if it's a girlfriend, we're going to pay out the money. They can do whatever they can with the money. The spouse, unfortunately, is the spouse. But as far as the life insurance proceeds, we're going to pay out to whoever, but we cannot dictate who will take care of that. If the girlfriend wants to be nice and offer up the money, I'm not sure if that would happen, but if it does, they have that option, but there's no obligation to. And understand, life insurance is the only vehicle that's paid out tax-free. Does that answer your question?
That does answer my question. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. I'm going to turn it over to Muhammad, has something to add.
Good evening. I just wanted to follow up on what Nikki had mentioned earlier about when you get a will and you put your properties on that will. You would also need to have your legal address. Whoever is doing your will for you, they may not know that. They may not know to ask that if you're not using an attorney. So it's not just the address of the property. You will need the legal address of that property. And you can typically get that from the city, or you can call your local real estate agent and we can get that information for you free of charge. So I just wanted to make sure that if you are a real estate owner and you're looking at getting a will, the legal address of the property is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Muhammad. Last slide, please. One last slide, sorry, Soror. And I see our time is coming to an end, and I want to wrap up by saying, in the scenario that was posited by Soror Pitts, that person chose violence. If you have a policy and you have one person paying it and then it's going to someone else and they don't know about that person, you do not care. You're gone. It doesn't matter. But for those people, they're going to need some attorneys. Probably it's going to be some violence. There's going to be an assault involved and probably a fight at the funeral, y'all. So may need an entertainment lawyer too, because we love going viral. We love representing. But in conclusion, oh yes, we were there for that. that'll be a story we'll provide y'all on offline. But thank you very much for taking this time and hearing us. To the screen, please. It has been a wonderful, wonderful thing to be asked by my chapter. This is my origin chapter, and I appreciate you all for attending.
Yes, also, thank you to my chapter for Suffolk Alumnae for wanting to do this again this year. We hope and pray that we have given you information that will stimulate, hey, I need to do something. Again, today doesn't end. We are available after today. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you to the Delta sorority. I am always available to answer questions. Hopefully the information that I had given you guys was informational, and hope you guys have a great evening.
Great evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our presenters for your tag team efforts in this presentation. Surely the viewing audience was thrilled to hear you share your knowledge and would have loved to hear more had it not been for the lack of time. We cannot thank you enough for joining forces and collaborating with the Suffolk Alumni chapter to make this a great event. To our viewers, thank you very much for giving us your attention. We are confident that you've learned something from this and that you will apply what is applicable to your life and act accordingly. To those viewers asking for a copy of the book, we will make sure that you are contacted for your information so that we may get the book to you. If you're watching this on replay or on YouTube, still put your name in the comment field and we will notify you and notify us that you want the book, and we'll be notified that you want the book. Also, continue to follow the Suffolk Alumni page to have notifications of the many updated events that we have available to the public. You may join us for our next Facebook Live event, which is the first of several Black health series entitled COVID-19 and Your Mental Health During the Pandemic. It will be presented on Saturday, March 27th at 1:00 p.m. Our guest will be Dr. Ethel McQueen Gibson. She is an associate professor at the Hampton University School of Nursing, and Tracy Barber, owner and founder of Fountain of Hope Counseling Center. We hope that you are able to join us right here on Facebook Live. Until then, God bless, be safe, and have a good night.
All right.